In this video, I'll help you decide what makes one miniature better than another, and we'll have a battle of the GW Servitors versus the Stargrave Automatons. You hear it said pretty frequently that Games Workshop makes the best wargaming miniatures in the world. Now, there are better companies out there if you're into display painting, of course, like companies that make those like high quality resin busts, or 75mm scale display statuettes and stuff like that. Things for people that paint for like display or for competition or whatever. But for gaming pieces and things that you actually use in games on the tabletop, it's the general consensus that GW makes the best models. But is it true? And what do people mean by best? I'm going to compare a recent set of models from Games Workshop to a recent set of models from another manufacturer in a little bit. But first, I'm going to talk about things that people consider when talking about like good models or the best models or things like that. Sometimes a particular model just, strikes you on vibes, right? Like the armor is awesome, or the pose is super cool, or it's just really fun to build, whatever, right? This is generally quite subjective, kind of a personal preference. And to be clear, right? All of this is to some degree subjective. But some factors are more subjective than others. Details are a major factor in how good a miniature might be. And Games Workshop, they got details on lock, right? Depending on who you talk to, some folks might say that they add too much detail into their models. Painting all that detail can be daunting to newer painters. Heck, I've been painting for a pretty long time, and I get put off by too much detail in, the models that they make sometimes myself. A lot of detail, when it makes sense, like the scales on a lizard person or something like that. I find those details to be welcome. It makes dry brushing so much easier, and it looks really, really nice when you do it that way. But over-detailed armor or weapons or equipment or whatever, stuff like that, I can do without. There's another factor to consider here as well, and that's the sharpness of the details. While I can usually kind of do without too much overall detail, I do generally want the details that are there to stand out and to be razor sharp. This is a thing that Games Workshop has gotten very good at in the last decade or two. The details are very distinct these days, and it does help with painting sometimes. Making very sharp details on the plastic models requires a much more expensive mold during the creation stage, right? Like when at least with dealing with plastic miniatures. So this is why some companies just can't do it. Since these models that I'll be comparing are both sets of plastic models delivered on sprues, then we also need to talk about assembly. Some models go together easily and don't have too many parts to them. Other models can be made up of sometimes dozens of parts or more. The recent Cathay Sentinel model from Warhammer the Old World, while admittedly quite large, is also made up of somewhere around 140 pieces, which is ridiculous. There are multiple reasons why a manufacturer will separate a model into so many pieces, but it does have an effect on the person building it too. Like I said in last week's video about being able to actually complete an entire army project because the models were already all assembled, pachow, building models can be a chore for some folks. I generally enjoy both building and painting, but if I'm honest, I prefer painting a little bit more. When a simple model of a soldier is 4 or 5 or 6 parts or something like that, then I don't really mind that much at all. They go together quickly, and I can move to the next steps. However, when a soldier model is 15 to 20 or more parts that I have to clip and then scrape the mold lines and all that kind of stuff, I become much less interested. Months ago, Games Workshop sent me the Kill Team Typhon box, with a team of Tyranids and then also a team of Imperial models made up of some Adeptus Mechanicus figures and a bunch of Servitors too. Servitors, if you don't know, are cybernetically enhanced, lobotomized humans used by the Imperium to perform simple, repetitive, or dangerous tasks that are beneath true artificial intelligence, according to Google at least, talking about, artificial intelligence. Now you can get that kind of team, separately in a box called Kill Team Battleclade if you're interested. Somewhere around that same time, I ordered a box of Stargrave Automatons from North Star Military Figures. They're described as a horrific fusion of dead flesh and advanced cybernetics. Automatons are drones in thrall to a synthetic intelligence. Though individually modified with a variety of implants, weapons, and armor, all automatons are driven by an unrelenting core directive to consume and integrate technology and organic matter alike. So these guys are a little bit more kind of like the Borg from Star Trek, but they look more like Games Workshop Servitors, sort of. I bought the Stargrave Automatons because I already own tons of the other Stargrave and Frostgrave plastics from North Star Military Figures. They're awesome models and great for all kinds of different games and spectacular for kit bashing as well, right? Like, these automatons are specifically great for bad guys in Space Station Zero, the sci-fi game made by Vince Venturell and I for our company, Snarling Badger Studios. Link in the description. That's mainly why I bought them, for Space Station Zero, but also just for all the extra heads and arms and such that are going to come in the kit, which, I could use in all kinds of other things. Once I received the automatons in the mail, it dawned on me that both the Stargrave Automatons and the Games Workshop Kill Team Battleclade Servitors are pretty similar models, kind of two sides of the same coin, I think. Therefore, I thought it might be a good idea to build and then paint some of them and then compare them, see which models are, better than the others. Now again, this will be my opinion, not gospel. However, I'm hoping that looking at both sets of these models and hearing what I have to say about them might help you understand what it is that you like and dislike about models in the future, so you can, buy the right stuff when the time comes. Let's start with the price. The Stargrave Automatons are 20 models for £22, which at this time of recording is about $29.82 American. I found them on American websites, people selling them on American websites for between $33 and $39. So it kind of depends on how you get them and, where you get them. The Kill Team Battleclade is 10 models, and only really 8 of them are Servitors, the other 2 are AdMech. And it sells for $70 American on the GW website. Now, if we're comparing pounds sterling, then they're £44 on the GW website, which is basically double the price for half the models, which honestly seems pretty standard with the industry these days. Let's look at the sprues. The automaton sprues have 5 models per sprue, and you get 4 identical sprues per box, plus, bases. So there's really just one sprue. You just get 4 copies of it in the automaton box. In the Battleclade box, you get 3 sprues, 2 normal kind of box-size sprues, and then 1 smaller sort of single-figure sprue, and then, bases as well. Each sprue is completely different from the other ones in the Battleclade box, so there's no copies, right? So again, fewer sprues, but more money. That said, the Games Workshop sprues are absolutely just choked with parts. There's very little space in between them, so, there's that. The GW Servitor parts are very high detail, visually complex, with greeblies and thingies and all kinds of just stuff everywhere. Now, admittedly, this is kind of the normal look of the Adeptus Mechanicus, if we're being perfectly honest with. They're generally covered in greeblies and whatnot. That's kind of their thing. In comparison, the automatons from Stargrave are a bit smoother. There's still visual detail. There's still some greeblies here and all that kind of stuff, but it's not excessive like it is on the GW models. The details on each piece of the automatons are a little simpler, yet still just as sharp, it seems, I'm pretty sure, as the details on the GW models. There's just way more details on the Games Workshop model stuff. The automatons are generally all pretty much 4 parts to make a model. The torso and legs are 1 part, and then there's 2 arms, and then a head. The arms can kind of be posed a little bit, you know. They're not like a ball and socket that's flat, so you can kind of move the arm up or down, or the arm up or down, that kind of stuff, right? And so, you know, same with the head. The head can be positioned in lots of different directions. However, there's only 5 total torso and leg chunks to choose from, right? So you might feel that your creativity is sort of limited a bit, right? But that said, there are 39 different arms to choose from on that sprue with the 5 torso/leg bits on it, and 18 different heads on each sprue as well. That means that you'll be able to make a lot of different combinations, you know, to your automatons. I couldn't do the math to figure out how many mathematical permutations there are, but it's a big number, I bet. More than 50. And also, like, you know, so in that situation, the limited torso/leg choices won't really matter that much. On the other hand, the GW Servitors all average about 9 to 12 pieces each. Each model is a different sculpt, right? And many of them get different weapons to choose from and different heads too. Now, you can't swap all the weapons with all the different bodies. Some weapons only fit on certain bodies and things like that. The heads are pretty swappable, but, you know, the leader of the Battleclade, the model on the smaller sprue, now he's only 5 pieces, which is pretty nice and easy, right? You know, that model, however, has no customization. So if you build one and then your friend also builds one too, they're pretty much going to look exactly the same once they're built. Not really posable in any way, unlike the automatons, which at least are slightly posable. So less talk and more rock. It's time to build. I decided to start with the automatons, and I built 5 different models from a single sprue with lots and lots and lots of parts left over for later, and it took me about 47 minutes to cut all the parts off, scrape mold lines, sanding, glue, and all that kind of stuff. They go together easily. Very easily. There's no instructions in the box because, honestly, you don't need any. You know, arms go where arms would go, and the head goes where the head should go. There's really nothing difficult to it. I love building these models, and I want to build more soon. Luckily, I've got another 15 in the box. Then I started working on the Servitors. I started building the second biggest Servitor in the group first. Mainly because he had a heavy bolter on him and I just kind of liked the look of it and everything like that. So he's like 11 parts or so, 11 or 12. And there were a few mold lines, a few more than I kind of would have expected, honestly, out of a newer model. Usually newer kits have fewer mold lines, I feel. Like, as that mold gets used over and over and over again, mold lines get worse generally. It's kind of, the mold starts to wear out. But these guys kind of had a little bit more in the mold line department than I would have thought, right? He also has like a huge, ugly gap running down both of his sides and across his like servitor butt, which I thought was sort of strange too, but you know, whatever. After finally getting that first guy done, I had already burned 29 minutes on just him alone. Remember, I did 5 of the other guys in 47 minutes. So I decided I didn't have the time or the patience on this particular day to build 4 more servitors. Then it was painting time. I primed them up with my airbrush, a matte black air primer from the Army Painter, and then a nice zenithal of bleached bone air instead of matte white air paint from the Army Painter. I usually use matte white, but in this situation, I wanted these models to all have a mostly kind of warm color palette, so I used the warmer bleach bone instead of white for the zenithal. Then it was almost all speed paints and washes on the models to really get through all 6 of them very quickly. I had to get them done from priming kind of earlier in the day to finished, all pretty much in one day because of scheduling and things like that. So I had to cut some corners. Honestly, both the GW and the Stargrave models all took the quick paint jobs pretty well. So then they're done. Now, as I said, I picked one of the tallest servitors from the set. That's why he's so much bigger than the Stargrave servitors. That said, Games Workshop has really been leaning into the heroic scale thing lately with many models in their line, so it's probably partly that a little bit as well. Overall, if I had to choose, considering details, customization, ease of building, ease of painting, aesthetic, just vibes, I'd probably stick with the Stargrave models. Partially because I generally stick with miniature agnostic games, so that's kind of a big thing too, but the look, customization, and the ease of building are huge for me as well. This was about as close to an apples to apples comparison that I could get here. Servitors versus Automatons. Usually it's hard to find other companies that make models like Games Workshop models, and GW generally kind of likes it that way, right? But hopefully this helped you to think a little bit more about what you're actually looking for in the models that you buy. Is it the price? Is it the ease of building? Is it the detail quality, customization? And hopefully, thinking about this will help you to make decisions in the future when you buy models for your collection. What did you think of the fight between the Servitors and the Automatons? Do you prefer distinct instructions to make a very specific model, or do you prefer some customization and something easy to build and to kit bash? Or is it all price? Or does the lore and the brand name rule all? Let us all know down in the comments below. Also, please help others to find videos like this via some depressmentation of the like button down there too. And hit subscribe while you're down there as well to see videos like this every single Friday. It's free. Thanks for watching.